The alarm clock's harsh buzz cut through the Detroit morning air at 4:30 a.m., jolting Marcus Thompson from a restless sleep. The 19-year-old rolled out of his narrow bed, his right knee immediately protesting with a familiar ache that had become his constant companion since the injury that changed everything. "Marcus, honey, you don't have to get up this early," came his mother's tired voice from the kitchen. Sarah Thompson was already brewing coffee, preparing for another double shift at Detroit General Hospital where she worked as a nurse's aide. "I know, Mom, but I need to get to the warehouse by 6, Marcus replied, pulling on his work uniform. The blue coveralls bore the logo of Henderson Logistics, where he spent his days loading trucks and moving inventory. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid $12 an hour, money his family desperately needed. The Thompson household occupied the bottom floor of a weathered duplex on Detroit's east side. The neighborhood had seen better days, with boarded-up houses dotting the street like broken teeth in a smile. But Sarah had worked tirelessly to keep their small home clean and welcoming, filling it with family photos and the aroma of home-cooked meals whenever she could afford the ingredients. Marcus grabbed his coffee and kissed his mother's cheek. "I'll be home around 3, then I head to Tony's for the dinner shift." Sarah studied her son's face, seeing the exhaustion that seemed permanently etched around his eyes. "Baby, you're working yourself to death. You're only 19. You should be in college, playing football, living your dreams." The mention of football sent a sharp pang through Marcus's chest. 18 months ago, he had been the star linebacker for Cass Technical High School, with college scouts filling the stands every Friday night. His speed, instincts, and leadership had made him one of the most recruited players in Michigan. The University of Michigan had offered a full scholarship, and Marcus had felt like his dreams were finally within reach. Then came the injury. It happened during the state championship game, a routine tackle that went wrong when an opposing player's helmet connected with Marcus's knee at an awkward angle. The sound of his ACL tearing was audible even over the crowd's roar. The surgery was successful, but the recovery took longer than expected. And by the time Marcus was cleared to play again, the scholarship offers had evaporated. "Dreams don't pay the bills, Mom," Marcus said quietly, though the words tasted bitter. "Besides, my knee isn't what it used to be." Sarah wrapped her arms around her son, feeling how his broad shoulders had grown even more muscular from his manual labor jobs. "Your knee might not be perfect, but your heart is. Don't you dare give up on yourself." Marcus hugged her back, drawing strength from her unwavering faith in him. Sarah Thompson had raised him alone since his father, James, had died in a car accident when Marcus was 12. She had worked multiple jobs, sacrificed her own dreams, and never complained, not once. Every decision Marcus made now was filtered through one question: how can this help Mom? The morning commute to Henderson Logistics took Marcus through downtown Detroit, where the city's revival efforts were most visible. New businesses were opening, young professionals were moving into converted lofts, and there was an energy that hadn't been present during Marcus's childhood. But the warehouse district where he worked remained stubbornly unchanged. Industrial, gritty, and unforgiving. "Thompson, you're 30 seconds late," barked Randy Mitchell, the floor supervisor, as Marcus clocked in. Mitchell was a man who seemed to take pleasure in making his workers' lives difficult, and he had developed a particular dislike for Marcus, perhaps sensing the young man's intelligence and potential. "Sorry, sir. Traffic was heavier than usual," Marcus replied respectfully, though he had actually arrived exactly on time. "Traffic's always heavy in Detroit." "Plan better," Mitchell sneered. "You're on truck 7 today. Driver's name is Rodriguez, and he's got a full load heading to Chicago. I want it done in 4 hours." Marcus nodded and made his way to the loading dock. The work was physically demanding, lifting boxes ranging from 20 to 60 pounds, organizing them in the truck according to delivery routes, and doing it all with speed and precision. His rebuilt knee ached constantly, but Marcus had learned to work through the pain. Carlos Rodriguez, the truck driver, was a friendly man in his 50s who had been driving routes for Henderson for over 15 years. He had watched Marcus work for several months and had developed a respect for the young man's work ethic. "Morning, Marcus. How's the knee today?" Carlos asked as he inspected his truck's tires. "Same as always," Angry but functional, Marcus replied with a wry smile. How was your weekend? Good, good. My youngest son had a football game. Reminded me of when you used to play. I looked up some of your high school highlights on YouTube. Man, you were something special. Marcus felt the familiar mix of pride and pain that came whenever someone mentioned his football career. That feels like a lifetime ago. You know, Carlos said thoughtfully, my nephew plays college ball at Eastern Michigan. He says they're always looking for walk-ons. Maybe you should... I appreciate it, Carlos, but I can't leave Mom right now. She needs me here. Carlos nodded understandingly, but Marcus could see he wanted to say more. Instead, the older man climbed into his cab, and Marcus began the methodical process of loading the truck. As he worked, Marcus's mind wandered to the dreams he had put on hold. He remembered the feeling of making a game-changing tackle, the roar of the crowd, the camaraderie with his teammates. More than the glory, he missed the sense of purpose, the feeling that he was building toward something meaningful. By 10 a.m., the October sun had burned away the morning chill, and Marcus was working in just a t-shirt. His movements were efficient and rhythmic, a dance he had perfected over months of repetition. He was reaching for a particularly heavy box when he heard voices approaching the loading dock. This is where we process most of our Detroit area deliveries, came an unfamiliar voice. We've been partnering with local community colleges to provide internship opportunities for students interested in logistics management. Marcus glanced over to see Randy Mitchell leading a small group of men in business suits around the warehouse. One man stood out from the group, older, wearing a simple gray hoodie, despite being surrounded by executives in expensive suits. There was something familiar about him, but Marcus couldn't place it. And this is one of our most reliable workers, Mitchell was saying, gesturing toward Marcus. Been with us about 8 months now. Thompson, come over here. Marcus wiped his hands on his work pants and approached the group, feeling self-conscious about his sweaty appearance. Marcus Thompson, sir, he said, extending his hand to the lead executive. Pleasure to meet you, Marcus. I'm David Henderson, owner of Henderson Logistics. Randy tells me you're one of our hardest workers. I just try to do my job well, sir, Marcus replied modestly. The man in the hoodie studied Marcus with sharp, intelligent eyes. There was an intensity to his gaze that made Marcus feel like he was being evaluated, though he couldn't imagine why. What's your background, son? The man asked quietly. Sir, your story. What brought you here? Marcus glanced at Mitchell, who nodded encouragingly. Well, sir, I graduated from Cass Tech last year. I work here mornings and at an Italian restaurant evenings to help support my mother. You play any sports in high school? Something in the man's tone made Marcus stand a little straighter. Yes, sir. Football. I was a linebacker. The man's eyebrows raised slightly. Any good? Mitchell laughed. Marcus is being modest. I looked him up after he started working here. He was one of the top players in the state. Had scholarship offers to Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, all the big schools. What happened to those offers? The man pressed gently. Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. I tore my ACL in the championship game senior year. By the time I was healthy again, the offers had moved on to other players. The group fell silent for a moment. The man in the hoodie nodded slowly, as if processing this information. Well, Marcus, thank you for your time, Mr. Henderson said. Keep up the good work. As the group moved on, Marcus returned to his loading duties, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. The man in the hoodie had looked at him like he was seeing something others missed. The rest of his shift passed uneventfully, and by 3 p.m., Marcus was clocking out and heading home for a quick shower and meal before his evening job at Tony's Italian Kitchen. Tony's was a neighborhood institution, a small family-owned restaurant that served authentic Italian food to a loyal customer base. Marcus worked as a busboy and occasional server, and he genuinely enjoyed the work. The restaurant's warm atmosphere and close-knit staff felt like a second family. Marcus, how was the warehouse today? Called Tony Castellano from behind the bar. Tony was a second-generation Italian-American who had inherited the restaurant from his father and run it for over 20 years. "Same as always, Tony. Heavy boxes and Randy Mitchell's cheerful personality," Marcus replied, tying on his apron. "That man needs to find some joy in his life," said Maria Santos, the head waitress, as she filled water glasses. "Speaking of joy, did you catch the Lions game yesterday?" Marcus shook his head. "I had to work a double shift at the warehouse." "How'd they do?" "Lost by 3 points, but they looked good. That new linebacker they drafted reminds me of someone." Maria gave Marcus a meaningful look. "Don't start, Maria," Marcus said. But he was smiling. The dinner rush at Tony's was always busy, and Marcus threw himself into the work with the same dedication he brought to everything. He bussed tables, helped serve food, and even filled in washing dishes when needed. The physical activity helped quiet his restless mind, and the interaction with customers was a welcome change from the isolation of warehouse work. Around 9 p.m., during a brief lull between the dinner rush and the late-night crowd, Marcus stepped outside for some fresh air. The October evening was crisp, and the street was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic on Jefferson Avenue. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through social media, seeing posts from former teammates who were now playing college football. His best friend from high school, Deshaun Williams, had posted photos from Ohio State's victory over Penn State. Marcus felt genuinely happy for his friend's success, but it was tinged with the sadness of what might have been. "You okay, kid?" Tony asked, joining him outside. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." "Just thinking about some things," Marcus replied. "Tony, can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Do you ever regret not chasing bigger dreams? I mean, you could have opened restaurants all over Detroit, maybe even franchised nationally." Tony considered the question seriously. "You know, when I was your age, I thought success meant getting as far away from this neighborhood as possible. I wanted to open a fancy place downtown, maybe even move to New York or Chicago. What changed your mind?" "I realized that success isn't always about going bigger. Sometimes it's about going deeper. This restaurant has fed 3 generations of families. I've watched kids grow up at these tables, seen first dates turn into golden anniversaries, celebrated births and mourned losses. That's not a small thing, Marcus. That's everything." Marcus nodded, understanding Tony's point, but still feeling the pull of unfulfilled dreams. "But," Tony continued, "you're 19 years old. You've got time for both. Time to chase those big dreams and time to come back and go deep. Don't let one bad break convince you that your story's already written." As Marcus headed home around 11 p.m., Tony's words echoed in his mind. The streets of Detroit looked different in the evening light, softer somehow, full of possibilities rather than limitations. Back at the duplex, he found his mother asleep on the couch, still in her scrubs, a medical journal open on her chest. Marcus gently woke her and helped her to bed, then sat at the small kitchen table with a glass of water, staring at the bills that were neatly organized in a basket. Rent, utilities, groceries, his mother's student loans from nursing school. The numbers told the story of their financial reality. Marcus was bringing in about $2,800 a month from his 2 jobs, which was just enough to cover their basic expenses with a little left over. It was survival, not prosperity. He picked up one of his mother's medical textbooks and flipped through it absently. Sarah was taking night classes to become a registered nurse, a dream she had deferred while raising Marcus alone. The irony wasn't lost on him. Just as he was sacrificing his dreams to support her, she had spent years sacrificing hers to support him. Before going to bed, Marcus stepped out onto the small back porch and looked up at the Detroit sky. The city's lights made it difficult to see many stars, but he could make out a few bright ones. He thought about the strange encounter at the warehouse, particularly the man in the hoodie who had asked such pointed questions. There had been something familiar about him, something that nagged at Marcus's memory. The way he carried himself, the intensity of his gaze, the quality of his questions. It all suggested someone accustomed to evaluating talent and making quick, important decisions. But Marcus pushed the thought aside. He had learned not to read too much into chance encounters. In his experience, hope was a dangerous luxury he couldn't afford. As he finally settled into bed, Marcus's knee throbbed with its usual nighttime intensity. He had developed a routine of gentle stretches and exercises that helped manage the pain. But tonight, the discomfort seemed sharper than usual. The physical therapist had warned him that manual labor jobs might exacerbate his condition over time, but what choice did he have? Outside, Detroit hummed with its nighttime energy, a city that, like Marcus himself, had faced devastating setbacks but refused to quit. The parallel wasn't lost on him. Maybe Tony was right. Maybe his story wasn't finished yet. But for now, Marcus Thompson was just a 19-year-old with 2 jobs, a rebuilt knee, and dreams that felt increasingly distant. Tomorrow would bring another early alarm, another day at the warehouse, another evening at Tony's. It was a routine that provided stability but offered little hope for change. What Marcus didn't know was that the man in the hoodie had spent the evening researching Cass Technical High School's 2023 football season, watching YouTube highlights of a linebacker who played with uncommon intelligence and heart. What he didn't know was that sometimes the most unexpected opportunities come disguised as ordinary Tuesday mornings in Detroit warehouses. What Marcus Thompson didn't know was that his life was about to change forever. The next morning brought the same 4:30 a.m. alarm, but Marcus woke with an unusual sense of anticipation. He couldn't explain it, but yesterday's encounter at the warehouse had stirred something in him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his playing days. "You're up early, even for you," Sarah observed as Marcus entered the kitchen. She was preparing her lunch for another 12-hour shift at the hospital. "Couldn't sleep much. How are your classes going?" Marcus asked, deflecting attention from his restlessness. "Good. Challenging, but good. Professor Martinez says I have a natural instinct for patient care." Sarah's face lit up when she talked about nursing school. At 38, she was the oldest student in her program, but also one of the most dedicated. "Of course you do. You've been taking care of everyone your whole life." Sarah paused in packing her lunch and studied her son. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I got a call from the financial aid office yesterday." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What kind of call?" "They're offering additional support for single mothers in healthcare programs. If I take it, I could go to school full-time and finish my RN degree in 18 months instead of 3 years. "Mom, that's incredible. Why don't you sound excited?" Sarah sat down across from him at their small table. "Because it would mean a significant reduction in income while I'm in school. We'd be living on financial aid and whatever part-time work I could find." Marcus immediately understood the implication. His 2 jobs would become even more critical to their survival. The prospect of pursuing his own dreams would become even more remote. "Take it," he said without hesitation. "Marcus, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm telling you. This is your chance, Mom. How many people get a second opportunity like this?" The irony of his words hung in the air between them. Sarah reached across the table and took her son's hands. "What about your chances, baby? When do you get your second opportunity?" "I'm 19, Mom. I've got time." "You've already waited too long." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both understanding the weight of this decision and the sacrifices it would require. At the warehouse, Marcus threw himself into his work with even more intensity than usual. The conversation with his mother had clarified something important. He needed to find a way to increase his income. 2 jobs at minimum wage weren't going to be enough if Sarah went to school full-time. "Damn, Thompson, what's gotten into you today?" Carlos asked, watching Marcus load boxes at a pace that seemed almost superhuman. "You trying to show the rest of us up?" "Just thinking about some things," Marcus replied, not breaking his rhythm. "Well, whatever those things are, keep thinking about them. I've never seen a truck loaded this efficiently." Around mid-morning, Randy Mitchell approached the loading dock with an expression that somehow managed to be both smug and annoyed. "Thompson, Mr. Henderson wants to see you in his office." Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. In his 8 months at Henderson Logistics, he had never been called to the front office. His mind raced through possible infractions. but he couldn't think of anything he had done wrong. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. Mitchell shrugged. "Above my pay grade, kid. Just clean yourself up and get up there." Marcus washed his hands and face in the employee's restroom and tried to make himself presentable. The walk from the warehouse floor to the executive offices felt like crossing into another world. Carpet replaced concrete, climate control replaced industrial fans, and the sounds of productivity gave way to the quiet hum of office work. David Henderson's secretary, a pleasant woman in her 50s, smiled at Marcus when he arrived. "Mr. Thompson, go right in. Mr. Henderson is expecting you." Marcus knocked on the open door and entered the spacious office. Henderson was behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. The man in the gray hoodie from yesterday was sitting in one of the chairs facing the desk. "Marcus, thanks for coming up. Please, have a seat," Henderson said warmly. "I believe you met Coach Belichick yesterday, but you may not have been formally introduced." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Coach Belichick, Bill Belichick. The Bill Belichick, 8-time Super Bowl champion, considered by many to be the greatest football coach in history, had been standing in his warehouse yesterday, asking him about his background. Marcus's mouth went dry. "Coach Belichick, it's an honor to meet you, sir." Bill Belichick studied Marcus with the same intense gaze from the day before. "Sit down, son. We need to talk." Marcus sat, his mind reeling. What could Bill Belichick possibly want with a warehouse worker from Detroit? "I spent some time last night watching film of your high school career," Belichick said matter-of-factly. "Impressive stuff. You had excellent instincts, good speed for your size, and something I don't see enough of anymore: football intelligence." "Thank you, sir," Marcus managed. "I also looked into your injury and recovery. ACL tears are tough, but they're not career enders anymore. Tom Brady played 12 more years after his ACL injury." Henderson leaned forward in his chair. "Coach Belichick has a proposition for you, Marcus, but first he wants to understand your current situation better." Belichick nodded. "Tell me about your life now. What are your responsibilities, your goals, your obstacles?" Marcus took a deep breath, unsure how much to reveal, but sensing that honesty was crucial. "Well, sir, I work 2 jobs to support my mother and myself. She's going back to school to become a registered nurse, which is her dream, but it means our financial situation is challenging." "What kind of work besides this?" Belichick asked. "I bus tables at Tony's Italian Kitchen in the evenings. Between the 2 jobs, I work about 70 hours a week." Belichick exchanged a look with Henderson. "That's a hell of a work ethic. What about your knee?" Marcus instinctively rubbed his right knee. "It's functional. I have some pain and stiffness, especially after long days, but I can do everything I need to do." "Can you run?" "Yes, sir." "Can you cut and change direction?" Marcus hesitated. "Not like I used to, but yes." Belichick leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Marcus, I'm going to tell you something that might sound crazy. I'm starting a new project, a training academy for young men who fell through the cracks of traditional college recruitment. Players who have the talent and character to play professional football, but didn't get the opportunities they deserved." Marcus felt his heart racing, but he tried to keep his expression neutral. "The program would be based in Massachusetts," Belichick continued. 6 months of intensive training, physical conditioning, skill development, mental preparation, and academic work. At the end of the program, participants would have the opportunity to try out for professional teams, including NFL practice squads. "That sounds incredible, sir, but..." Belichick held up a hand. "Let me finish. Participants would receive full room and board, plus a monthly stipend of $3,000. After successful completion of the program, I would personally recommend qualified candidates to NFL scouts and coaches." Marcus's mind was spinning. $3,000 a month was more than he made from both his current jobs combined, but Massachusetts was 1,000 miles away from his mother. "Coach," Marcus said carefully, "I'm deeply honored that you would consider me for something like this, but I can't leave Detroit right now. My mother needs me here." "What if she didn't?" Henderson interjected. Marcus looked confused. "What if we offered your mother a full-time position here at Henderson Logistics?" Henderson continued. We need someone with healthcare experience to manage our employee wellness program. It would pay $45,000 a year with full benefits, and she could continue her nursing education through our tuition reimbursement program. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. I don't understand. Why would you do that? Belichick leaned forward. Because I believe in investing in character, and everything I've learned about you in the last 24 hours tells me you're exactly the kind of person this program is designed for. What have you learned about me? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. I know you were raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to support you. I know you were an honor student as well as a star athlete. I know that when your football dreams ended, you didn't feel sorry for yourself. You went out and found 2 jobs to support your family. I know your former coaches describe you as the most coachable player they ever worked with, and your current supervisors say you're the hardest worker they've ever seen. Marcus stared at the legendary coach, overwhelmed by the thoroughness of his research. Most importantly, Belichick continued, I know you turned down a chance to walk on at Eastern Michigan because you wouldn't leave your mother. That tells me more about your character than any highlight reel ever could. The office fell silent as Marcus processed everything he had heard. This felt too good to be true, like a dream that would evaporate if he examined it too closely. Coach, can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? You could have your pick of any player in the country. Why choose someone whose best days might be behind him? Belichick smiled for the first time since Marcus had met him. Son, I've been coaching for over 40 years, and I've learned something important. Talent without character is worthless, but character without talent can achieve extraordinary things. You have both. You also have something else, he continued. You have the hunger that comes from having something taken away from you. That kind of motivation is rare and powerful. Henderson nodded in agreement. Marcus, I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone is operating below their potential. You're capable of much more than loading trucks, no matter how well you do it. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes, and he fought to maintain his composure. This is really happening? It's happening if you want it to happen, Belichick said. But I need to be clear about something. This program will be the hardest thing you've ever done. The physical training will push you beyond your limits. The mental preparation will challenge everything you think you know about football. And there are no guarantees at the end. Success will depend entirely on your effort and determination. When would it start? Marcus asked. January 15th. That gives you time to tie up loose ends here and for your mother to transition into her new role. Marcus thought about his mother's reaction, about leaving everything familiar, about the possibility of failure. But he also thought about Tony's words from the night before. Sometimes you have to chase the big dreams before you can go deep. I need to talk to my mother, Marcus said. Of course, Belichick replied. Take all the time you need. But Marcus? Yes, sir. This opportunity exists because of choices you've already made. To work hard, to sacrifice for others, to never give up even when things looked hopeless. You've already proven you deserve this chance. Now you just need to decide if you're brave enough to take it. As Marcus walked back to the warehouse floor, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement, fear, hope, and disbelief battled for dominance. 24 hours ago, he had been a warehouse worker with abandoned dreams. Now he was being offered a chance to train with one of the greatest coaches in football history. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Carlos noticed Marcus's distraction but didn't press for details. Randy Mitchell seemed annoyed that Marcus had been called away from his duties, but even his complaints couldn't penetrate Marcus's euphoria. During his lunch break, Marcus called his mother. "Baby, you sound different. What's going on?" Sarah asked immediately. "Mom, I need you to sit down. I have something incredible to tell you." Marcus explained everything. Belichick's identity, the training program, Henderson's job offer. Sarah listened in stunned silence. "Are you sure this is real?" she finally asked. "I'm holding Coach Belichick's business card in my hand. Mom, it's real." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, this is everything you've dreamed of. What do you think? Should I do it? Baby, you know what I think. The question is, what do you think? That evening at Tony's, Marcus struggled to focus on his duties. His mind kept drifting to Massachusetts, to the possibility of playing professional football, to the chance to prove that his dreams weren't dead. During a quiet moment, Tony pulled him aside. Okay, kid. What's got you so distracted? You've been walking into tables all night. Marcus told Tony everything. The older man listened with growing amazement. Madonna mia, Tony breathed when Marcus finished. Bill Belichick. The Bill Belichick? That's what I keep asking myself. Tony grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. Marcus, do you remember what I told you last night about chasing big dreams? Yeah, but Tony, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if my knee can't handle it? What if you succeed? What if you're better than you ever imagined? What if your knee is stronger than you think? Tony countered. Kid, fear is a natural response to opportunity, but regret is worse than failure. That night, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind too active for sleep. Through the thin walls of the duplex, he could hear his mother moving around, probably unable to sleep as well. He thought about his father, James Thompson, who had died chasing his own dreams. James had been a construction worker with aspirations of starting his own contracting business. The car accident that killed him had occurred while he was driving home from a meeting with potential investors. Would James want his son to play it safe, or would he want him to take the chance of a lifetime? Around 2 a.m., Marcus heard a soft knock on his door. Come in, Mom. Sarah entered and sat on the edge of his bed. Can't sleep either. Too much to think about. Marcus, I want you to know something. I've spent 19 years making sure you had every opportunity to succeed. This is the biggest opportunity you'll ever get. But what about you? What about us? Baby, letting you go pursue your dreams isn't losing you. It's completing the job I started when you were born. Marcus sat up and hugged his mother tightly. I'm scared, Mom. Good. That means it matters. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't be worth doing. They talked until dawn about the program, about the risks and rewards, about what success might look like. By the time the sun rose over Detroit, Marcus Thompson had made his decision. He was going to Massachusetts. He was going to train with Bill Belichick. He was going to chase his dreams one more time. What he didn't know was that this decision would not only change his life, but would ultimately inspire a generation of young athletes who had been written off too early. What he didn't know was that sometimes the greatest victories come from the courage to try again after the world has told you it's over. What Marcus Thompson was about to discover was that his story was just beginning. The weeks following Marcus's life-changing meeting passed in a whirlwind of preparation and emotional turbulence. Word of his opportunity had spread through their neighborhood like wildfire, generating reactions ranging from excitement to skepticism. You sure this ain't some kind of scam? Asked Mrs. Jenkins, their elderly neighbor, as she watched Marcus load boxes of his belongings into Sarah's car. Sounds too good to be true, baby. I had the same thought, Mrs. Jenkins, Marcus replied respectfully. But I've done my research. It's legitimate. What he didn't mention was the sleepless nights he had spent verifying every detail of Belichick's program, reading articles about similar initiatives, and even calling the New England Patriots offices to confirm that the legendary coach was indeed involved in player development programs. Sarah had started her new position at Henderson Logistics 3 weeks earlier, and the transformation in her demeanor was remarkable. For the first time in years, she came home from work energized rather than exhausted. Marcus, you should see the wellness program I'm developing, she said one evening over dinner. We're implementing mental health resources, nutrition counseling, and even basic financial literacy workshops for the employees. David Henderson really wants to take care of his people. How are the other employees responding to you? Marcus asked. Mixed reactions, Sarah admitted. Some are excited about the changes, others are suspicious of management's motives. But Maria Santos from Tony's came by yesterday. She's thinking about applying for a position in our new customer service department. The interconnectedness of their small community was one of the things Marcus would miss most about Detroit. Here, everyone knew everyone, and success was celebrated collectively while struggles were shared burdens. At the warehouse, Marcus had trained his replacement, a young man named Kevin Washington, who reminded Marcus of himself a year earlier, hard-working, eager to prove himself, and carrying the weight of family responsibilities on his shoulders. "Man, I can't believe you're really leaving to train with Bill Belichick," Kevin said, as they worked side by side on Marcus's final day. That's like getting called up to the major leagues. It feels surreal," Marcus agreed. "6 months ago, I thought my football career was over forever." Randy Mitchell had been surprisingly gracious about Marcus's departure, even going so far as to wish him luck publicly, though Marcus suspected the supervisor was secretly relieved to see him go. "Thompson always made the rest of us look bad," Marcus overheard Mitchell telling another supervisor. "Kid worked like he had something to prove every single day." The farewell party at Tony's Italian Kitchen had been an emotional affair. The small restaurant was packed with friends, neighbors, and regular customers who had watched Marcus grow up. Tony had prepared a feast, and Maria Santos had organized a collection that netted Marcus $847. Money he initially protested accepting, but eventually accepted graciously when he realized it represented the community's investment in his dreams. "This isn't goodbye," Tony had said in his impromptu speech. "This is our neighborhood sending one of our own to represent us on the biggest stage in football. Marcus carries a piece of all of us with him." Deshaun Williams had driven down from Ohio State for the party, bringing 2 teammates who wanted to meet the guy who was training with Belichick. "Bro, I'm so jealous," Deshaun said as they sat outside Tony's, sharing a moment away from the crowd. "Training with Belichick is like getting a masterclass from Beethoven if you're a musician. I keep waiting for someone to tell me it's all a mistake," Marcus confessed, "like they meant to offer this to someone else." "Marcus, stop that," Deshaun said firmly. "You earned this. Remember sophomore year when you studied game film until 2 a.m. every night? Remember how you'd run extra drills after practice when everyone else went home? This isn't luck, man. This is the universe finally catching up to your work ethic." The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing with a text from an unknown Massachusetts number. "Marcus, this is Coach Belichick. Wanted to personally confirm your travel arrangements for Monday. Flight leaves Detroit at 6:15 a.m., arrives Logan at 9:30. Someone will meet you at baggage claim with a sign. Looking forward to getting started. BB." Marcus showed the message to Deshaun, who whistled low. "Bill Belichick just texted you personally. Dude, you're living in a different reality now." That Sunday evening, Marcus's final night in Detroit, he and Sarah sat on their small front porch watching the neighborhood kids play football in the street under the streetlights. The scene was achingly familiar. Marcus himself had played countless games on that same stretch of asphalt. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Sarah said softly. "What's that, Mom?" "Your father would be so proud. He always said you had something special, something that would take you far from here." Marcus had been thinking about his father constantly as his departure approached. James Thompson had been a dreamer who ran out of time to chase his aspirations. Now his son was getting a chance to pursue dreams that had seemed impossible just months earlier. "I'm going to make him proud," Marcus said quietly. "I'm going to make you both proud. Baby, you already have, every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood. Distant music, conversations in multiple languages, the occasional car passing by. It was the soundtrack of Marcus's childhood, and he was trying to memorize every note. "Mom, are you going to be okay? Really okay?" Sarah turned to study her son's profile in the dim light. "Marcus, for the first time in years, I'm not just surviving. I'm actually living. This opportunity isn't just changing your life, it's changing mine too." Monday morning came with typical Detroit November weather, gray, cold, and unforgiving. Marcus's flight was scheduled for 6:15 a.m., which meant leaving the house at 4:30. Sarah had taken the day off to drive him to the airport, despite his protests that he could take a cab. "I've been taking care of you for 19 years, she said as they loaded his 2 suitcases into her car. "I'm not stopping now." The drive to Detroit Metropolitan Airport was mostly quiet, both of them lost in thought. Marcus stared out the window at the city that had shaped him, wondering when he would see it again. "Marcus," Sarah said as they pulled into the departure area, "I want you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll remember that you belong there. You're not a charity case or a feel-good story. You're a football player who earned his spot through talent and character. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Marcus hugged his mother tightly, fighting back tears. "I promise, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, baby. Now go show them what Detroit tough looks like." The flight to Boston was Marcus's first time on an airplane, though he tried not to let his nervousness show. He spent most of the trip reading a packet of materials that Belichick's staff had sent him. Information about the training facility, academic requirements, and what to expect during his first week. The program was more comprehensive than Marcus had initially realized. In addition to physical training and football skills development, participants would take college-level courses in sports psychology, nutrition science, and business fundamentals. There would also be media training and financial literacy workshops. The goal, read one section of the materials, is to develop complete individuals who are prepared for success both on and off the field. Football careers are finite, but the lessons learned through elite athletic training can last a lifetime. When the plane began its descent into Boston, Marcus pressed his face to the window, taking in his first view of New England. The landscape looked different from Michigan, older somehow, with a sense of history that was palpable even from 30,000 feet. At Logan Airport, Marcus easily spotted his ride, a man in his 40s holding a sign that read, "Marcus Thompson, Belichick Academy." He was dressed in Patriots gear and had the build of a former athlete. "Marcus, I'm Steve Morrison, Director of Operations for the Academy. Welcome to Massachusetts." Steve's handshake was firm, and his demeanor was professional, but warm. As they walked toward baggage claim, he provided a running commentary about the program. "Coach Belichick is very hands-on with this project," Steve explained. "He personally approved every aspect of the curriculum and facility design. You're part of the inaugural class, 12 young men from across the country who all have similar stories to yours." "Similar how?" Marcus asked. "Talented players who fell through the cracks for various reasons. Injuries, academic issues, family circumstances, late physical development. The common thread is that you all have the ability to play professional football but didn't get traditional opportunities." They drove south from Boston through a landscape that looked like something from a postcard. Rolling hills, bare trees, and small New England towns that seemed frozen in time. After about 45 minutes, they turned into a facility that took Marcus's breath away. The Belichick Academy occupied a sprawling campus that looked like a cross between a college and an NFL training facility. The main building was modern but designed to blend with the historic New England architecture of the surrounding area. "Home sweet home for the next 6 months," Steve said as they parked. "Let me give you the tour." The facility was extraordinary. There was a full-size indoor football field, a state-of-the-art weight room, sports medicine clinic, academic center, and dormitory-style housing. Everything was designed with attention to detail that reflected Belichick's legendary perfectionism. Coach wanted to create an environment where you could focus completely on development without any distractions, Steve explained as they walked through the weight room. "Everything you need is here." Marcus's room was simple but comfortable, a single bed, desk, dresser, and private bathroom. His roommate was a young man named Tyler Brooks, a wide receiver from rural Alabama whose college scholarship had been revoked due to academic struggles. "Marcus, man, I've been watching your highlight tape," Tyler said, jumping up from his desk where he had been reading. "That hit you put on the Southfield quarterback senior year was absolutely vicious." "You've seen my highlights?" Marcus asked, surprised. "Dude, we've all watched each other's film. Coach Belichick sent us everyone's tape as homework. You were a beast, man." Over the next few hours, Marcus met the other 10 members of his class. They came from all over the country and represented diverse backgrounds. but they shared common threads: exceptional talent, significant obstacles, and unwavering determination. There was James Mitchell from Los Angeles, a cornerback whose gang-related neighborhood made college recruiters nervous. Roberto Vasquez from Texas, an offensive lineman whose undocumented status had complicated his recruiting. David Kim from California, a quarterback whose parents wanted him to focus on academics rather than football. Each story was different, but Marcus recognized the same hunger in their eyes that he felt in himself, the desperate desire for a second chance. That evening, the entire group gathered in the Academy's conference room for their first meeting with Bill Belichick. The legendary coach entered wearing his familiar gray hoodie, and the room fell silent. "Gentlemen," Belichick began, his voice carrying easily through the room, "welcome to the hardest 6 months of your lives." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You're here because traditional paths didn't work for you. Maybe it was bad luck. Maybe it was bad decisions. Maybe it was circumstances beyond your control. Doesn't matter now. What matters is what you do from this moment forward." Belichick walked around the room, making eye contact with each young man. "Some of you think this is about football. It's not. This is about discovering who you are when everything comfortable is stripped away. This is about learning to excel when the pressure is overwhelming. This is about developing the mental toughness to succeed at the highest level of anything you choose to pursue." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This was exactly what he needed to hear. "The training will be brutal. The academic work will challenge you. The psychological preparation will force you to confront your limitations and exceed them. Some of you won't make it through the program." Belichick stopped in front of the group, his gaze intense. "But those who do will be prepared for anything life throws at them. You'll have the tools to succeed in the NFL, in business, in any arena where excellence is required." The coach outlined the daily schedule. 5:30 a.m. wake-up, 6 a.m. conditioning, 8 a.m. breakfast, 9 a.m. football skills training, 12 p.m. lunch, 1 p.m. academic classes, 4 p.m. strength training, 6 p.m. dinner, 7 p.m. study hall, 10 p.m. lights out. 7 days a week for 24 weeks, Belichick said. No days off, no excuses, no exceptions. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and terror. This was going to be unlike anything he had ever experienced. "Questions?" Belichick asked. Roberto Vasquez raised his hand. "Coach, what happens if we get injured during training?" "You get the best medical care available, you recover, and you get back to work. Football is a contact sport. Injuries happen. Champions play through pain." David Kim asked, "What percentage of participants typically make it to NFL tryouts?" Belichick smiled slightly. "Wrong question, son. The right question is, what am I willing to sacrifice to be among those who make it?" After the meeting, Marcus called his mother from his room. The conversation was brief. Sarah was in class, but hearing her voice helped ground him. "How does it feel, baby?" she asked. "Terrifying and amazing at the same time," Marcus replied honestly. "Mom, I think this is going to change me in ways I can't even imagine yet." "That's the point, isn't it? Growth requires leaving your comfort zone." That night, as Marcus lay in his narrow bed listening to Tyler's quiet breathing, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he had been loading trucks and bussing tables, convinced that his dreams were over. Now he was in Massachusetts, preparing to train with one of the greatest coaches in football history. The path ahead was uncertain and demanding, but for the first time since his injury, Marcus Thompson felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Tomorrow would bring the first real test of his commitment to this extraordinary opportunity. What Marcus didn't yet understand was that the physical and mental challenges ahead would pale in comparison to the personal transformation he was about to undergo. What he didn't know was that this program would teach him not just how to be a better football player, but how to be a better man. What Marcus Thompson was about to discover was that sometimes the most important victories happen long before you ever step onto a field. The alarm sounded at 5:30 a.m. sharp, jolting Marcus from a restless sleep filled with dreams of missed tackles and disappointed coaches. His first week at the Belichick Academy had been a brutal introduction to a level of training intensity he had never experienced, even during his high school career. "Rise and shine, Roomie," Tyler groaned from the other bed. Day 8 of football boot camp. Marcus rolled out of bed, his rebuilt knee protesting more loudly than usual. The daily conditioning sessions had been pushing every participant to their physical limits, and his surgically repaired joint was struggling to keep up with the demands. The dormitory hallway was filled with the sounds of 12 young men reluctantly embracing another day of punishment disguised as opportunity. Marcus had learned that morning conversations were minimal. Everyone was conserving energy for the gauntlet ahead. Outside, the December Massachusetts air was bitter and unforgiving. Marcus had never experienced cold like this in Detroit, where the urban heat island effect moderated the worst winter weather. Here, the wind seemed to cut through clothing and settle in his bones. The morning conditioning session took place in the indoor facility, where Coach Patricia Williams, a former Olympic track athlete, put the group through a series of drills designed to test speed, agility, and mental toughness simultaneously. "Thompson," she barked, as Marcus struggled through a complex cone drill that required rapid direction changes. "Your footwork is sloppy. If you can't cut cleanly, you can't play linebacker at this level." Marcus gritted his teeth and repeated the drill, focusing on precise foot placement despite the burning in his knee. He had learned not to make excuses about his injury. Coach Williams had made it clear that explanations were not acceptable. Only results mattered. After conditioning came breakfast in the Academy's dining hall, where nutrition was treated as seriously as any other aspect of training. The meals were carefully planned by sports nutritionists to optimize performance and recovery. But Marcus found himself missing his mother's home cooking and the comfort food at Tony's. "Man, I would kill for a cheeseburger," muttered James Mitchell, the cornerback from Los Angeles, as he stared at his portion-controlled plate of lean protein and complex carbohydrates. "I dream about pizza," added David Kim, the quarterback from California. "Like actual dreams where I'm swimming in marinara sauce." Despite the complaints about food, Marcus noticed that everyone was looking leaner and more muscular than when they had arrived. The combination of intense training and proper nutrition was transforming their bodies with remarkable speed. The football skills training session was where Marcus felt most comfortable, even though it was also the most demanding part of each day. Bill Belichick personally oversaw these sessions, and his attention to detail was legendary. "Football is played between your ears first, then with your body," Belichick explained as the group reviewed game film from the previous day's scrimmage. "Thompson, watch yourself on this play." The screen showed Marcus pursuing a ball carrier during a drill, and Marcus could see immediately what the coach was highlighting. His pursuit angle was slightly off, allowing the runner an extra step before contact. "What do you see?" Belichick asked. "I took a poor angle, coach. Should have aimed for where he was going, not where he was." "Exactly. At your size and speed, you can't afford to waste steps. Every movement must be efficient and purposeful." This level of detailed analysis applied to every aspect of their training. Nothing was left to chance and no mistake went unnoticed. Marcus found the intensity both exhausting and exhilarating. During the academic portion of the day, Marcus was surprised to discover how much he enjoyed the sports psychology classes taught by Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a former consultant to several professional sports teams. "Elite performance isn't just about physical ability," Dr. Walsh explained during a session on mental resilience. "It's about developing the psychological tools to perform under pressure, overcome setbacks, and maintain focus when everything around you is chaotic." Marcus thought about his injury and the dark period that followed. "Dr. Walsh, how do you rebuild confidence after a major setback?" "Excellent question, Marcus. Confidence isn't built through positive thinking or motivational speeches. It's built through preparation and small successes that accumulate over time. Every rep you complete correctly, every drill you master, every physical challenge you overcome. These create genuine confidence because they're based on evidence." The Business Fundamentals course, taught by a former NFL player turned successful entrepreneur, opened Marcus's eyes to possibilities he had never considered. Gentlemen, your athletic careers will last maybe 10 to 15 years if you're incredibly lucky, said Professor Mike Rodriguez. What's your plan for the other 50 years of your life? The question hit Marcus hard. He had been so focused on just getting another chance to play football that he hadn't thought seriously about what came after. As the weeks progressed, Marcus began to notice changes in himself that went beyond physical conditioning. His thinking was becoming clearer and more strategic. His ability to process information quickly was improving. Most importantly, his confidence was growing not from wishful thinking, but from demonstrated competence. However, the program was also taking its toll. 2 participants had already been dismissed, one for repeatedly failing to meet conditioning standards, another for attitude problems that proved incompatible with the team environment. "This isn't summer camp," Tyler observed one evening as they studied film in their room. "People are actually getting cut." Marcus nodded, feeling the constant pressure to prove himself worthy of his spot. Every day brought new challenges, and there was no guarantee that surviving one day meant surviving the next. The turning point came during the 7th week of the program. Marcus was struggling through a particularly difficult linebacker drill that required him to shed blocks while maintaining gap responsibility. His knee was aching badly, and his technique was suffering as a result. After several failed attempts, Belichick called him aside. "Thompson, what's going on? Your performance has been declining for 3 days. Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My knee is bothering me more than usual, coach. The cutting and change of direction drills are aggravating it." Belichick studied Marcus for a long moment. "Come with me." They walked to the sports medicine clinic, where Dr. Amanda Foster, the team physician, examined Marcus's knee thoroughly. "There's some inflammation, probably from overuse," she diagnosed. "Nothing serious, but it needs attention." "What kind of attention?" Belichick asked. "Modified training for a week, anti-inflammatory medication, and enhanced recovery protocols. He'll be fine, but pushing through this could cause real damage." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "Coach, I can keep training. I don't need any special treatment." Belichick's expression was unreadable. "Thompson, what do you think happens to players who can't maintain their health?" "They get cut," Marcus replied quietly. "Wrong. Players who ignore their health get cut. Players who manage their health intelligently have long careers. There's a difference between playing through pain and playing through injury." For the next week, Marcus followed a modified training schedule that focused on upper body conditioning and mental preparation, while his knee inflammation subsided. He worried constantly that he was falling behind his classmates, but Dr. Walsh helped him reframe the situation. "Marcus, what you're learning right now is more valuable than any physical drill," she explained. "You're learning how to be a professional athlete, which means making smart decisions about your body and your career." When Marcus returned to full training, something had changed. His technique was sharper, his understanding of the game was deeper, and his confidence was unshakable. The forced break had allowed him to process everything he had learned and integrate it more completely. "Thompson's looking like a different player," Marcus overheard one of the assistant coaches tell Belichick. The time off seemed to help him put it all together. By the 10th week of the program, Marcus was not only keeping up with the training but excelling. His performance in scrimmages was drawing praise from coaches, and his leadership qualities were emerging as he helped younger or struggling participants. "Marcus, you've become the emotional leader of this group," Belichick observed after a particularly intense practice session. "The other men look to you for stability and guidance." "I don't know about that, coach. I'm just trying to do my job." "Leadership isn't a job, son. It's a responsibility that comes with character. You can't teach what you have." The comment stayed with Marcus as he reflected on his journey. When he had arrived at the academy, he had been focused solely on proving himself as a football player. Now he was discovering capabilities he hadn't known he possessed. During a video call with his mother that evening, Marcus tried to explain the transformation he was experiencing. "Mom, I feel like I'm becoming the person I was supposed to be all along. Does that make sense?" Sarah smiled at him through the computer screen. "Perfect sense, baby. You're not just training your body, you're training your spirit. How are things in Detroit? How's the new job?" Wonderful. I'm implementing a mentorship program that pairs experienced employees with new hires. David Henderson loves the idea, and we're already seeing improved retention rates. Marcus felt a surge of pride in his mother's success. Her confidence had grown dramatically since starting her new position, and she was clearly thriving in an environment that valued her intelligence and compassion. "Marcus, I have some news," Sarah continued. "I've been accepted into an accelerated nursing program that starts this summer. If I complete it, I'll have my RN degree by next December." "Mom, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of you. But Marcus, I want you to know something important. Even if football doesn't work out the way we hope, what you're doing there is changing you in ways that will last forever. You're becoming the man your father always knew you could be." That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about his father's dreams and his own. James Thompson had died pursuing his aspirations. But maybe that wasn't tragic. Maybe it was heroic. Maybe the real tragedy would have been never trying at all. As the program entered its final phase, Marcus knew that everything he had worked for was about to be tested. NFL scouts would be visiting in 6 weeks to evaluate the participants, and only the best would receive opportunities for professional tryouts. The pressure was intense, but Marcus felt ready. The scared, uncertain young man who had arrived from Detroit had been replaced by someone stronger, smarter, and more confident. Whatever happened next, Marcus Thompson knew he belonged at this level. What he didn't yet realize was that his journey at the academy had been observed not just by coaches, but by scouts who were already taking notice of the young linebacker who had overcome adversity with grace and determination. What Marcus Thompson was about to discover was that sometimes the greatest rewards come not from avoiding failure, but from proving you can rise after falling. The late February morning air in Massachusetts carried the promise of spring, but inside the Belichick Academy, the atmosphere was electric with tension and anticipation. Today marked the culmination of 24 weeks of the most intensive training Marcus Thompson had ever experienced. Pro Day, when NFL scouts would evaluate the Academy's inaugural class. Marcus woke before his 5:30 alarm, his mind already racing through the day's schedule. Representatives from 8 NFL teams would be watching every drill, every measurement, every interaction. For many of the participants, this would be their only chance to prove they belonged in professional football. "You ready for this, roomie?" Tyler asked, sitting on the edge of his bed in the pre-dawn darkness. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus replied, though his stomach was churning with nervous energy. "You?" "Man, I keep thinking about my grandmother watching me play high school ball. She always said I was special, even when college scouts didn't see it. Today I find out if she was right." The morning conditioning session had been replaced with light movement and stretching, designed to keep the participants loose without risking injury. Marcus's knee felt strong and stable, the result of months of careful management and the Academy's exceptional sports medicine program. At breakfast, Bill Belichick addressed the group for the final time as their coach. "Gentlemen, today is not about being perfect. Perfect doesn't exist in football or in life. Today is about being yourselves, the improved, developed, confident versions of yourselves that you've become over the past 6 months." His eyes moved around the table, making contact with each young man. "Some of you will get immediate opportunities. Others may have to wait for their chance. But all of you are leaving here as different men than when you arrived. That transformation is the real victory, regardless of what happens today." Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude toward the legendary coach who had taken a chance on a warehouse worker from Detroit. Whatever happened next, this experience had changed his life fundamentally. The scouts began arriving at 9 a.m., and Marcus was struck by how ordinary they looked. Middle-aged men in team polo shirts carrying clipboards and wearing the slightly bored expressions of people who evaluated athletic talent for a living. Steve Morrison provided introductions, giving each scout a brief background on the program and the participants. Marcus noticed how their demeanor changed when Belichick's involvement was emphasized. The man's reputation commanded universal respect. The day began with measurements and medical evaluations. Marcus stood 6'2" and weighed 235 pounds. 10 pounds heavier than when he had arrived, all of it muscle. His body fat percentage had dropped to 8%, and his cardiovascular fitness metrics were in the elite range. "Your knee looks good," observed Dr. Sarah Chen, the medical evaluator for the Chicago Bears. "Range of motion is excellent. Stability tests are all positive. How does it feel during high-intensity activity?" "Strong, doctor." "No pain, no limitations," Marcus replied confidently. The first on-field evaluation was the 40-yard dash. Marcus had run a 4.65 in high school, respectable for a linebacker but not exceptional. Months of sprint training with Coach Williams had refined his technique significantly. As Marcus approached the starting line, he thought about all the early mornings, the extra conditioning sessions, the attention to detail that had brought him to this moment. He also thought about his mother, probably in a conference room at Henderson Logistics, presenting her mentorship program results to company executives. "On your mark. Set." The electronic timer started, and Marcus exploded from his stance with perfect form. His stride was longer and more efficient than it had ever been, his knee showing no signs of hesitation or compensation. He crossed the finish line knowing he had run well. 4:58, announced the timer operator. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. The improvement might seem small to an observer, but he knew it represented countless hours of technique refinement and physical development. The position-specific drills were where Marcus felt most confident. Linebacker work emphasized the skills he had always possessed, reading plays, reacting to movement, and making tackles in space. But now these natural abilities were supported by enhanced technique and deeper understanding. During a pass coverage drill, Marcus found himself matched against Tyler Brooks, his roommate, and one of the fastest receivers in the group. The route was a quick slant, designed to test a linebacker's ability to cover slot receivers in short passing situations. Tyler's release was crisp, and his hands were sure, but Marcus had studied this exact scenario hundreds of times in film sessions. He stayed in Tyler's hip pocket through the break, arriving at the catch point simultaneously with the ball. "Excellent coverage," noted the scout from the New England Patriots. "Textbook technique and timing." The tackling drills showcased what Marcus had always done best, arriving at the ball carrier with controlled violence and secure technique. His rebuilt knee showed no hesitation as he drove through contact and wrapped up ball carriers. But it was during the scrimmage portion of the evaluation that Marcus truly distinguished himself. The participants were divided into two teams for a controlled game situation, with scouts evaluating decision-making under pressure. Marcus found himself defending against a triple-option play that required him to read multiple keys simultaneously: the quarterback's eyes, the fullback's movement, and the pitch relationship between the quarterback and halfback. It was exactly the kind of complex play that had always suited his football intelligence. The quarterback faked the handoff to the fullback and started down the line with the halfback trailing for a potential pitch. Marcus stayed disciplined, maintaining his gap responsibility while keeping his eyes on the quarterback's inside shoulder, a technique Belichick had drilled into him. When the quarterback committed to keeping the ball, Marcus closed the distance with remarkable speed, arriving at the point of contact just as the runner tried to cut upfield. The tackle was textbook, low and through the hips, driving the ball carrier backward. "That's NFL-level recognition and reaction," Marcus heard one scout tell another. "Kid's got exceptional instincts." The day's final evaluation was a character and intelligence assessment conducted individually with each scout. Marcus found himself in a conference room with representatives from three teams: the Detroit Lions, New England Patriots, and Chicago Bears. "Marcus, tell us about your background," began the Lions scout, a man named Mike Sullivan. "We know about your high school career and your injury, but what happened between then and arriving here?" Marcus told his story honestly: the warehouse job, supporting his mother, the chance encounter with Belichick. He spoke about learning to work through disappointment and finding purpose in helping others. "What drives you now?" asked the Patriots scout. "I want to prove that talent and character can overcome any setback," Marcus replied. "But it's bigger than just me. I want to show other kids from my neighborhood that impossible dreams are only impossible until someone achieves them." The Chicago scout leaned forward. How do you handle criticism and coaching? Marcus thought about the hundreds of corrections he had received from Belichick and his staff. I believe criticism is just coaching in disguise. Every critique is an opportunity to improve, and I'd rather be challenged by someone who believes in my potential than ignored by someone who doesn't. As the formal evaluations concluded, Bill Belichick gathered the group for a final meeting. 12 young men who had arrived as strangers now sat together as brothers, forged by shared adversity and common purpose. I want you to remember something, Belichick said. Success in football, like success in life, isn't determined by what happens to you. It's determined by how you respond to what happens to you. His gaze settled on Marcus. Some of you overcame injuries. Others overcame academic struggles, family circumstances, or simple bad luck. But all of you overcame the temptation to give up when things looked hopeless. The coach's voice carried the weight of decades of experience working with elite athletes. That quality, the ability to persist when persistence seems pointless, that's what separates champions from everyone else. Whether you play professional football or not, you now possess something that can't be taught and can't be taken away. As the meeting ended, scouts began approaching individual participants with preliminary feedback. Marcus watched as Tyler was pulled aside by the Patriots scout, while James Mitchell had an animated conversation with representatives from the Raiders. Mike Sullivan from the Detroit Lions approached Marcus as he was packing his gear. Marcus, I want you to know that we've been impressed with everything we've seen today. Your physical numbers are good, but your football intelligence and character are exceptional. Marcus felt his heart racing. Thank you, sir. We'd like you to participate in our rookie minicamp in May. It's not a guarantee of anything, but it's an opportunity to compete for a practice squad spot. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Detroit Lions, his hometown team, the franchise he had cheered for since childhood, was offering him a chance. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. Sullivan handed Marcus a business card. Someone from our organization will be in touch with details. Keep training, keep developing, and keep being the person you've shown us today. As the scout walked away, Marcus stood in the facility where he had been transformed, holding a business card that represented the culmination of everything he had worked toward. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "How did it go, baby?" Marcus called her immediately, and Sarah answered on the first ring. "Mom, I did it. The Lions want me for rookie minicamp." Sarah's scream of joy was so loud that several other participants looked over with amused grins. "Marcus, oh my God, baby, I'm so proud of you. Your father would be so proud." As Marcus talked with his mother, he looked around the facility that had been his home for 6 months. Tomorrow, he would return to Detroit to prepare for the next phase of his journey, but he would never forget the lessons learned in this place. Bill Belichick approached as Marcus ended his call. "Congratulations, son. Detroit made a smart choice. Coach, I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity. You changed my life." Belichick shook his head. "I didn't change anything, Marcus. I just provided a platform for you to show who you already were. Everything you accomplished here came from inside you." The coach paused, studying the young man who had exceeded every expectation. "But Marcus, this is just the beginning. Making a team is harder than getting an opportunity to try out. Stay humble, stay hungry, and remember that the work is never finished." As Marcus packed his belongings that evening, Tyler helped him carry boxes to the car that would take him to the airport. "Man, I can't believe we actually did this," Tyler said. 6 months ago, I was working at a warehouse in Alabama, convinced my football dreams were over. "Where are you headed?" Marcus asked. "Patriots want me for their minicamp. Looks like we might be facing each other twice a year if we both make it." They embraced with the bond of men who had endured something extraordinary together. The flight back to Detroit gave Marcus time to process everything that had happened. 6 months earlier, he had been a warehouse worker with abandoned dreams. Now he was returning home as an NFL prospect with a legitimate chance to play professional football. But the transformation went deeper than football. Marcus had discovered leadership qualities he hadn't known he possessed. He had learned to persevere through challenges that would have broken his younger self. Most importantly, he had proven to himself that he could succeed at the highest level of competition when given the opportunity. Sarah was waiting at Detroit Metropolitan Airport with tears streaming down her face. She hugged her son tightly, and Marcus could feel her pride and joy in that embrace. "Tell me everything," she demanded, as they drove through the familiar streets of Detroit. Marcus recounted the day's events, the scout meetings, and the opportunity with the Lions. Sarah listened with growing amazement at how far her son had traveled. Not just geographically, but personally. "Baby, when do you report to the Lions?" "May 15th for rookie minicamp. I've got about 10 weeks to prepare." "What will you do until then?" Marcus had been thinking about this question throughout the flight. "I want to go back to the warehouse for a few weeks if they'll have me. And I want to spend time at Tony's. I need to remember where I came from before I take the next step." Sarah nodded approvingly. "That sounds like the son I raised." That evening, Marcus sat on the same front porch where he had said goodbye to his mother 6 months earlier. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, but Marcus saw it through different eyes now. The struggles were still real, the challenges still present, but the possibilities seemed infinite. He thought about Bill Belichick's words. "Success isn't determined by what happens to you, but by how you respond to what happens to you." Marcus had responded to his injury by working harder. He had responded to his family's financial struggles by taking on more responsibility. He had responded to an unexpected opportunity by giving everything he had. Now he was facing the biggest test of all, proving he belonged in the NFL. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Tony Castellano. "Marcus, I heard the news from your mother. The whole neighborhood's talking about it. When can you come by the restaurant? I want to hear everything. How about tomorrow night? I could use some real Italian food after 6 months of athletic nutrition." "Perfect. And Marcus, the whole community is behind you. You're carrying our dreams with you." The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation and reconnection. Marcus returned to Henderson Logistics for a month, working alongside Kevin Washington and sharing stories of his academy experience. Randy Mitchell was surprisingly respectful, even asking for advice about his own son's football aspirations. "You know, Thompson, I always knew you were different," Mitchell admitted during Marcus's final shift. "Takes guts to chase a dream when everyone thinks it's over." At Tony's, Marcus was treated like a returning hero. Regular customers wanted to hear about training with Belichick, and Maria Santos insisted on taking selfies to post on the restaurant's social media accounts. "You're putting us on the map, mijo," she said proudly. "Tony's Italian Kitchen, where future NFL players eat." But Marcus's most meaningful moments were spent with his mother, who was thriving in her new role at Henderson Logistics and excelling in her accelerated nursing program. "I have something to show you," Sarah said one evening, pulling out her latest test scores. "Dean's List again. At 38 years old, can you believe it?" Marcus hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. We're both chasing our dreams now." As the weeks passed, Marcus maintained the training regimen he had learned at the academy, working out at a local gym and running drills at the high school field where his football journey had begun. His former coach, Mike Davis, helped him prepare for the Lions minicamp. "Marcus, you look like a completely different player," Coach Davis observed as they reviewed film together. "Your technique is so much more refined, and your understanding of the game has gone to another level." "Coach Belichick taught me that football is played with your mind first," Marcus replied. "Every physical rep has to be backed by mental preparation." 2 weeks before minicamp, Marcus received a call that changed everything. It was Mike Sullivan from the Lions. "Marcus, I have some news. We've decided to sign you to our practice squad immediately, with the opportunity to compete for the active roster during training camp." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. "Sir, are you saying I'm already on the team?" "You're on the practice squad, which means you're part of the organization." "But Marcus, This is just the beginning. Practice squad players get released all the time. You'll need to prove every day that you deserve to stay. When Marcus shared the news with his mother, Sarah broke down completely. "Baby, you did it. You actually did it. You're a professional football player." The signing ceremony at the Lions facility was surreal. Marcus stood in the same building where he had watched his heroes play on television, now wearing their uniform and carrying their logo on his chest. Head coach Dan Campbell addressed him personally after the paperwork was completed. "Marcus, we believe in your potential, but potential doesn't play games. Show us in practice that you belong here, and opportunities will follow." The first practice was a revelation. The speed of the game was unlike anything Marcus had experienced, even at the academy. Professional players processed information faster, moved with greater precision, and competed with an intensity that was almost frightening. But Marcus belonged. The months of training with Belichick had prepared him for this level of competition. His technique was sound, his conditioning was excellent, and his football intelligence allowed him to adapt quickly to the Lions' defensive system. After 2 weeks on the practice squad, Marcus was called into Coach Campbell's office. "Son, we're moving you up to the active roster. Our starting linebacker Derek Barnes is dealing with an injury, and we need depth at the position." Marcus felt like he was floating as he walked out of the office. Active roster meant he could play in games. It meant he was no longer just surviving in the NFL. He was competing for playing time. His first game was against the Chicago Bears on a Thursday night in October. As Marcus ran through the tunnel at Ford Field, he thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the warehouse loading dock to the bright lights of professional football. In the stands, Sarah Thompson wiped away tears as she watched her son take the field wearing number 54 for the Detroit Lions. Beside her sat Tony Castellano, Maria Santos, and dozens of neighbors who had driven downtown to witness this miracle. Marcus played 12 snaps on special teams that night, and each one felt like a gift. When he made his first NFL tackle, a clean hit on a Bears kickoff returner, the crowd at Ford Field erupted. But the real victory had happened months earlier, in a warehouse in Detroit, where a young man had refused to accept that his dreams were dead. It had happened in Massachusetts, where Bill Belichick had seen something special in a linebacker that others had overlooked. Most importantly, it had happened in the heart of a 19-year-old who had chosen hope over despair, work over self-pity, and perseverance over surrender. As Marcus walked off the field after his first NFL game, he carried with him the hopes of everyone who had ever been told their dreams were impossible. He carried the pride of a city that understood what it meant to fight back from devastating setbacks. And he carried the unshakable knowledge that sometimes the most unexpected opportunities come to those who never stop preparing for their moment. The story of Marcus Thompson was no longer about a young man whose dreams had been derailed by injury. It was about a professional athlete who had proven that character and determination could overcome any obstacle. But perhaps most importantly, it was about a son who had honored his father's memory and his mother's sacrifice by refusing to give up on the impossible. In the end, Bill Belichick hadn't just given Marcus Thompson an opportunity to play football. He had given him the chance to discover who he was meant to become. And that, Marcus knew, was a gift that would last far beyond his playing career. The warehouse worker from Detroit had become an NFL linebacker. But more than that, he had become living proof that in America, no dream is ever truly dead until you stop fighting for it. As the lights of Ford Field dimmed and the crowd dispersed into the Detroit night, Marcus Thompson smiled, knowing that this was not the end of his story. It was just the beginning. 2 years later, Marcus Thompson was named to his first Pro Bowl as a starting linebacker for the Detroit Lions. In his acceptance speech, he thanked Bill Belichick for seeing potential where others saw only problems. Sarah Thompson graduated summa cum laude from nursing school and was promoted to Director of Employee Health and Wellness at Henderson Logistics, where she implemented programs that became models for companies nationwide. The Belichick Academy expanded to include programs for former military personnel and first responders seeking second careers in professional sports, with Marcus serving as a mentor and board member. And in a small warehouse in Detroit, A new employee named Kevin Washington read about Marcus's Pro Bowl selection and decided that maybe his own dreams weren't as impossible as they seemed. Because sometimes, one person's courage to pursue the impossible becomes permission for others to believe in their own extraordinary potential.